I said it. Okay, we're going to start our recording. Vamos a empezar grabando. We're going to start recording for those who will be watching later, because we do have quite a few people out with company in from out of town. Muy normal. Cuando tenemos invitados, ¿verdad? Bueno, y buenas tardes. No puedo decirles buenas noches porque tenemos mucha luz, mucha luz. Estamos cambiando de la estación. Estamos en plena primavera. We're right smack in the middle of spring. My allergies are testimony to that. And y aquí vamos. Vamos a practicar muchísimo. Vamos a escuchar. Vamos a practicar con el pasado esta noche. A lot of past practice, but we're going to focus the past practice, especially with some, a lot with ir. You know, both the pretérito and the imperfecto with ir, and why we use them, make sure people understand that. We'll do some more listening with stories. You guys will get a lot of chances to practice various things. I'm hoping we get time to talk a little bit and see a little bit about verbs that will typically always be in pretéritos. So we want to kind of get ourselves real grounded in that past idea thing and how we use it. ¿Hay alguna pregunta? Is there any question you have on either the videos, and I'll kind of briefly show them to jog your memory. Were there any questions on this video on using was going, or the two little stories here, or two little past stories? One was a continuation of the other. Let's make a story one and let's make a story two. ¿Hay alguna pregunta o no? ¿Nada? Okay. Bien.
I have a question about something else, though.
Oh, sí, Jane, dime.
When we went over when you use the imperfect, and when you use the preterite, is that I'm getting them all confused, I guess. Is that preterite are the actions that begin and end. If something is over with, it's always preterite.
Yes, a preterite indicates an action that has a clear and definite beginning and end. So the reason people get this mixed up is like, well, if it's past, isn't it over with already? You know, why? But imperfecto deals with repeated actions, things where we don't really know how often it was done. There's not a clear delineation about how often it happened, but we know it happened a lot, and also for descriptions. So those are the two big reasons for using imperfecto.
Okay, so in her story, she says, I think she said something about if you're giving your opinion about what happened.
Okay. Okay. The video with Paula.
Uh-huh.
Okay. That was a little more specific because that was talking about the preterite and imperfect of ser. That one is a little harder, but we'll dissect that a little bit. So let's go to that. And I'm going to kind of put it down to some really simple things. So let's review that first. I need to flip my screens a little bit. You know, preterite and imperfect, if it feels like pretty darn weird to you, well, that is a normal thing. English speakers in particular have a real hard time with this. Other languages also have preterite and imperfect, so or things that are like it. So you know, it's something that you know, French has it imperfect as well. So let's begin. Vamos a empezar. Let's start first with knowing what what the verbs are. And these are not endings. These are the whole verb. Ser winds up being irregular in a lot of tenses. It's regular in a few, like future and conditional, but most of the other tenses, ser, to be, winds up being irregular. And in a lot of languages, the to be verb is quite irregular in many, many, many different languages. But ser, that thing that is an ID tag, right? Ser tells something, it tells it something is, am, is, are, or in the past was and were. Okay, so, pues, entonces, las formas de ser en pretérito fue. Where does the F come from? I have no clue, ni idea. I cannot tell you in the least, but they all start with that F. So, fui, fuiste, fue, fuimos, fuistes, no practicamos con fuistes, fuimos. It should say fueron at the bottom. She's got two fuimoses. It should say fueron. Fueron, F-U-E-R-O-N, F-U-E-R-O-N. Fueron should be the bottom bracket. She's got a typo there. Okay. Ser, imperfecto, era. This is one of the three verbs that is irregular in imperfecto. The only three verbs that are considered irregular in imperfecto in Spanish are ser, and ir, and venir. I'm sorry, not venir, perdón. Ver, to see. And the only reason ver really winds up being irregular is that we keep that the E letter from ver. Instead of getting rid of the whole ER, we keep the E part of ver. But aside from that, it isn't really that irregular because it uses the ia endings of an ER verb. So even though ver is an irregular, it isn't that hard to remember. But era is kind of hard to remember that it comes from ser because it doesn't look like ser. Got era, eras, era, éramos, erais, eran. So here are the key things. If you're saying something was a certain way, or things were, or somebody was a carpenter, or, whatever, how do I know whether I use pretérito imperfecto? This is probably the hardest verb, but a lot of it is going to depend on the point of view of the speaker. However, we can set down some rules that are pretty clear. So always con objetos, and I think I got it before it got that out. Ay, where does she have her nice thing? Okay, con objetos. So, siempre utilizamos era. We always use the imperfecto. Era or eras or era or éramos, eran, to describe objects in the past. So if you're talking about what your car was like when you first got your first car, if you're talking about objects, actual physical things, you're always going to use imperfecto for that. I mean, it's just what they do. You're never going to say something like, and I have to think hard to do this because we don't do this. El libro fue negro. The book was black. No, because it's an object. It's a thing. And so if we want to describe the book in the past, it's always el libro era negro. We'll never say fue. Okay. Whenever you're describing a physical thing in the past, it's going to be imperfecto. You don't have to think about it. Okay. Okay. Por ejemplo, mi primera bicicleta era blanca. Mi primera bicicleta era blanca. Mi primer coche, mi primer carro era azul. My first car was blue. I'm talking about things in the past. Okay. Somebody put up a banner, a flag for St. Patrick's Day to decorate their house. You talk about, oh, la bandera, their little flag. La bandera era verde. The flag was green. Okay. Whenever we talk about objects in the past, it's going to be imperfecto. It's just what they do, because an object, a thing, is not an event. It can't be something with a perfect beginning and end. You know, that object is not an activity. Okay, so she's got some examples here. Mi casa en Venezuela era pequeña, era muy cómoda, las paredes eran blancas, el piso era de granito, las puertas eran marrones, mi cama era grande, mi lugar favorito era el patio. My favorite place was the patio. The patio is a thing. Even though you can't pick up a patio and move it around, it's a thing. My favorite place was the patio. If we're talking about things, objects, it's going to be imperfecto, and that's a slam dunk. Don't have to think about it. Okay. Fue con personas. So most of the time, and this one is where we start to get into a little bit murky territory. Usually, most of the time, and that really means most of the time, you know, I'm going to go as far as to say like 90% of the time. Now, if we're not talking about things, but people, generalmente utilizamos era para describir personas en el pasado. If you describe people in the past, it's usually going to be era also most of the time. And the only time it's going to flip into fue is if you talk about a person and you're talking about a definite beginning and an end. So somebody in a certain year was doing something, or like you name the year that, okay, por ejemplo, Lincoln, el presidente Lincoln fue presidente desde 1860 hasta 1865. If I'm saying Lincoln was president between these years, now I'm talking about a definite beginning and an ending. These bookmark things that mean a beginning and an ending. And then I can say Lincoln fue presidente. But if I just describe Lincoln, many things about him, Lincoln era un hombre muy alto, era abogado. He used to be a lawyer because, you know, okay, I could like look up when he started being a lawyer, but, you know, that throughout his life, that was a profession. Era abogado. Era también presidente. So whether you use fue or era, pretérito imperfecto, depends a little on whether you can really define it and pinpoint it. But most of the time when you describe people, most of the time it's going to be imperfecto. Okay. So here is where we get to the really sticky part with the eventos. Events will sometimes do a flippy flop between pretérito and imperfecto. Okay, they'll do a flippy flop. It may go either way. So when she talks about an event, she's so she's going to give examples of what events, what we would consider an event. Saying this event was una fiesta, un viaje, unas vacaciones, vacation, una clase. These are events because they happen. Yeah, they happen? Conferencia, meeting, a honeymoon. So a lot of events have a definite beginning and an end, like a meeting at work or a party, okay? A soccer match, a sports event of any kind. Those would all be events. So for an event, a thing that happens, generalmente se usa fue. Usually we use fue. Now, here is where it does get a little bit murky, though, because I'm going to describe this in a slightly different way. There are times when somebody will describe an event and they won't use fue. They might use era. And that means they're kind of putting themselves in the middle of the action and describing to you what was going on, as if it were, you know, you're there with it and it was happening and it was going on, like you're real live. They're telling the story from a really personal point of view. They might flip into imperfecto. They might. Okay. But generally, because an event has a beginning and an end, if somebody just asks you, hey, how was the wedding? How was the wedding? Fue genial. It was great. Fue genial. It was a great wedding. Generally, okay? But if somebody digs deep into into describing, again, if they cross the line into saying, I'm going to give you an eyewitness account of what happened at the wedding, and they put you live in the action, they might go into descriptive mode and start to use imperfecto. So when they're talking about events, you kind of have to roll with the punches and you listen to how that speaker is talking about it. Are they talking about it as a description, in which case they may flip into imperfecto? Or, you know, are they just saying, oh, yeah, that meeting was, wow, that meeting was long. The meeting was really, la conferencia fue muy larga. It was really long. You know, that's not much of a description. It's not telling you who did what. It's just saying it was a long meeting. La conferencia fue difícil. Wow, that meeting was difficult. And they're kind of done with it. So it may go either way. There is some leeway with how people may use that. Does that make a little more sense, Jane?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bien. Era or fue imperfecto or pretérito with ser is tough for those of us speaking English, but take your cue from people as they are describing something. If they're really giving a description, it'll go into imperfecto. But that whole thing of describing people or objects, you're going to hear era way more than you hear fue. Okay? Bien? Vale. Okay. Muy bien. Bueno, vamos a continuar entonces. So let's move on. Let's take a look at this second verb, which is really, really irregular. And I'm going to want you guys to do some practice with this. This is the second verb of the imperfectos that is very irregular. Es muy irregular. ¿Cuáles son y cómo se usan las formas de ir en el pasado? And here's where I want you to do some work in smaller groups. Formas irregulares en pretérito y el imperfecto. Both tenses are irregular, so we'll take a look at ir en pretérito. And oddly, ir en pretérito es exactamente como ser. Ser, for some bizarre reason that I surely don't know why, nor have I heard anyone ever describe why, which means nobody knows. Why does ser do this? Ser and ir share the exact same verb in pretérito. And why that is, I don't know. But that thing of using ser for, fui, fuiste, fue, well, here it does a copycat. Ir en pretérito, fui, fuiste, fue. Fuimos, fuistes, fueron. Okay, so you will not confuse it when somebody speaks to you. You will not confuse it, and you really will not get mixed up with, do they mean ir or ser in pretérito, even though it uses the same word, because the context will make it so super clear. Because when we use ir in pretérito as went, it's going to mean you went someplace. You went at a certain time. There are going to be all these context clues that tell you. They're going to mention locations, places, lugares, sitios. So from the rest of the sentence, it'll be super obvious whether fui means I was or I went. It'll be obvious from the rest of the sentence. But do know that ir and ser have this very annoying trait of sharing the exact same preterite form. It's pretty weird. Okay. However, imperfecto, even though ir is also irregular in imperfecto, it does not share a form here. So super obvio, very obvious. Ir will be this, not an ending, but the whole word, right? Iba, ibas, iba, íbamos, ibais, and iban. Okay. So when do we use them? This is way, way, way easier than ser. Way easier than ser, right? When you say you went somewhere and all you mean is, well, here's what I did, it's going to be pretérito. So quite a lot, quite frequently, ir is going to be pretérito quite often. We will need it in imperfecto when we mean somebody was going or they used to go. It has to be talking about a habit, something that was done frequently. Also, for what someone was going to do. Oh, okay. So I'd sent you a video on that as well. Quite often, saying that I went over to my neighbor's house. We went to Lake Tahoe for a luxurious location on vacation. My relatives went to Florida. Those are pretty obvious that it's going to be pretérito. But when you say something like, well, you know what? I was going to clean up the kitchen, but that just didn't happen, right? Wow, the neighbors were going to come at 8:00. I don't see them yet. They were going to, okay? This idea of imperfecto for somebody was doing something comes in. So ir in imperfecto means either something that happened a lot, or somebody was going to do something, which we use kind of a lot in conversation. Okay. So we've got all of these. Y vamos a practicar. Let's practice these. Vamos a practicar. ¿Cómo se dice en español? And I'm giving you both sets of verbs for ir. I'm giving you the fui, fuiste, fue, fuimos, fuistes, fueron, and the iba, ibas, iba, íbamos, ibais, iban. And I want you to take a look at these 6. And I want you to figure out, how would you translate these ideas and use the correct tense? So what your intention is, the idea you want to convey of an event and it was over, or a habitual thing, that is going to govern whether you choose out of the fui group or the iba group. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you go out and do this in some breakout rooms to see if you can figure these out. Es importante. I think I'm just going to send you off into 2 groups here. Sí. Bien. So you'll have you'll be groups of 3 to work together. I'm going to give you maybe a little more than 5 minutes, about 7 minutes, because you've got 6 sentences. And so you're going to be deciding whether it is a description or habitual thing, imperfecto, or an event, boom, over and done with, and see if you can convey how to say these ideas. I will send the list of sentences in the room with you. You will not see the sentences until everybody clicks on the join button. Does that make sense? Bien? Bien?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
A ver, bueno. Hagan click en join. Click on join, and then I'll send your list in to you. Okay. Aquí vienen todos. Here comes
Marilyn?
everybody back. Sí.
The words did not show up on all of our screens.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
Okay. Did only one person out of the group get them?
Two
Or
of
did it-
us, we did all right.
We got him.
You got, okay. So some of them didn't show up. You were able to at least tell people what was in the,
Yeah,
okay.
but I didn't get it.
Disappeared with a minute to go. We couldn't
Yeah.
remember. the end of the
Okay.
sentence.
Okay. Uy, lo siento. Wow. Yeah. I don't know why that happened. Went into some, but not others. Okay. Well, let's take a look. Let's take a look at these and see how you did. Vamos a compartir cuáles son las respuestas. Let's take a look at what the answers should be, how we would say these. ¿Cómo se dice? How do you say it? We went to the dentist. Are we going to pick from the pretérito or imperfecto?
Pretérito. We went. It's done.
Pretérito, just plain old we went. Right. So it's just a plain old event. Okay. ¿Cómo se expresa? We went to the dentist.
Fuimos.
Fuimos.
Dentista.
Al dentista.
Ayer.
Al dentista.
Sí, fuimos al dentista o a la dentista, depende del dentista, ¿no? Fuimos al dentista o a la dentista ayer. Nada más. Eso es. That's it. Okay. Fácil. Yeah. Could you flip ayer way up in front and still get the same meaning? Absolutely, you could. So, yeah. Ayer fuimos al dentista. Igual. Fuimos a la dentista. Igual. Excepto que el dentista es mujer. La dentista es mujer. Okay. Vale. We always went to the park with grandma.
Siempre.
Imperfect.
Imperfecto. We need an imperfecto. Siempre
Y vamos.
Vamos
íbamos
Al
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 parque.
parque
Con abuela.
parque.
con abuelita. Sí, abuela, abuelita, abuelita, depende. Sí, grandma, abuelita. Sí, eso es. ¿Y por qué? Why do we have imperfecto here?
Always. It's a habit.
Always. Yeah. It's that idea of used to, we always did that. So there we go. Okay. I went to my friend's house. Imperfecto or pretérito?
Pretérito.
Pretérito. Fantástico. ¿Cómo se dice? I went.
Fui a la casa de mi amigo.
Fui a la casa
De mi amigo.
de mi amigo. Exacto. Exacto. Muy bien. Bien claro, nice and clear. Okay. A ver. Well, colloquially, we may just phrase this as what time did you go to the movies, right? But at what time, no importa. En español se dice at what time. You need that at up front in the Spanish part of it, okay? ¿Y cómo se expresa? Perdón. Primero, pretérito o imperfecto?
That one's tricky.
We had pretérito.
Oh, you guys think this one was tricky. Okay, so let's figure out. What time did you go to the movies?
It's done with. You went.
It's done with. It's definitely done with. Sí, it's definitely done with. Okay. It's done with, so we will need pretérito. ¿Cómo se dice at what time?
¿A qué hora?
¿A qué hora? Did you go?
Fuiste.
¿Fuiste? A un amigo fuiste, a alguien que no es amigo fue usted, pero fuiste generalmente, ¿no? ¿A qué hora fuiste?
Al cine.
Al cine. Al cine. And here we probably won't use the term película, even though película means movie, because movies, we usually mean, if you go to the movies, you're going to a theater, right? So we have to express this as that word, al cine. ¿A qué hora fuiste al cine? If you forgot the a qué hora part, you could express that question as cuando. ¿Cuándo fuiste? When did you go? You're still getting the idea across with cuando. Cuando is not quite as exact as a qué hora. Bien? Okay. The kids would go to the lake every weekend. Pretérito imperfecto. ¿Cuál?
Imperfect.
Perfecto.
Imperfecto. Imperfecto. Would go indicates that it is something that happened a lot. Okay. Plus, we've got the every weekend there. So, ¿cómo se dice?
Los
Los
niños
niños
iban al lago cada fin de semana.
Los chicos o niños o pues quizás no niños, los chicos, los muchachos iban
Al lago.
al lago.
Todos fin de semana.
Sí, okay, there are different ways you can say every, cada fin de semana o quizás todos los fines de semana. Bien. Cada fin de semana is probably a little more common for every, right? Todos gets that idea across as well, but people are going to be probably more likely to say cada fin de semana. Los chicos iban al lago. They would do that, okay? Oh, esto es un poquito más difícil. The hardest one is the last. See, I was going to the store when it started to rain. Oh, we've got two actions. I was going to the store. It started to rain. Let's look at the I was going to the store part.
Iba.
That's
Iba.
a la tienda.
Imperfecto. I know it's kind of done probably, but if what you mean is I was going, if you mean I was doing, we're going to flip into the imperfecto. Yo iba a la tienda, el super, maybe supermarket, el supermercado, sí, tienda más general. Yo iba a la tienda cuando. When, and now it started to rain. Pretérito o imperfecto?
Pretérito.
Pretérito. When we talk about something started to happen, it's started. And started is considered a boom, a real sudden thing. Cuando, ¿cómo se dice? It started to rain. Cuando?
Empezó.
Empezó a
Comenzó.
llover. Empezó a llover. It started to rain. Empezó a llover. You could say comenzó a llover, but I think empezó is a little more common. But we'll put that in case you used it or thought about it. That would be fine as well. Empezó a llover. And there we've got two different kinds of past tenses in the same exact sentence. Claro? Is that one pretty clear? Sí o no?
Sí.
Okay. ¿Alguna pregunta o no? Easier than era or fue, isn't it? Más fácil, ¿no? Okay. Vamos a ver. Let's take a look at a second half of this. And this one is going to be very, very, very specific. Okay. If the idea you want to express is I was going to do something, I was going to is going to indicate an imperfecto always. Okay, you must use imperfecto if your intent is I was going. You're now describing something, right? And I'm going to send you out to see if you can figure these out as well, but you're going to be making fewer decisions here, okay? Because we're going to be using was going. Somebody in all of these sentences, somebody was going to do something. So what we're going to have is was going, a form of iba, with a and a second infinitive. And that second infinitive doesn't get conjugated, right? I was going to work. I was going to run. I was going to hike. I was going to paint the walls. I was going to do anything, right? But that second verb will not be conjugated because it's indicating an intention that you had. I want you to finish them all by saying, pero, but we couldn't, okay? So they'll all finish with a pero no pude, but I couldn't. Pero no pudo, but he couldn't or she couldn't. Pero no pudimos, but we couldn't. Okay. And I'm even going to put in I'm going to put in one more. Pero no pudieron. Okay. And the no pude, no pudo, no pudimos, no pudieron means that person couldn't get it done. They just didn't manage to do it. Okay. So I was going to watch the program, but I couldn't. They were going to eat dinner. But they couldn't. Because I don't know, the oven broke because the show came on. They wanted to watch a show instead of eat, whatever. He was going to drive, but he couldn't. We were going to buy it, but we couldn't. She was going to take, and you need llevar for that to take. She was going to take us, but she couldn't because her car broke down, maybe, right? I was going to call him, but I couldn't. Oh, my phone ran out of battery, something like that, right? Bien? Okay. A ver, we'll send you out to do those. That makes sense?
I have a question.
Sí, dime.
Can you say pero no lo pudieran, or you put lo in there? Or
Put a
not?
law in there. Because couldn't do it?
You're just
Because of the word it?
you're just
Probably
saying,
not. No. You won't need a law.
okay.
You might say this. No lo pudo hacer, but he couldn't do it. If you include the no pudo hacer, if you include an hacer, you might use an it word, a lo. No lo pudo hacer. No lo pudimos hacer. No lo pudieron hacer. You only need a lo if you have a pudo hacer.
Okay.
But a lot of times people shorten these ideas to the shortest possible way to say it. And that's by just saying, no pude, I couldn't. No pudiste, you couldn't. No pudo, he couldn't, she couldn't. No pudimos, we couldn't. No pudieron, they couldn't. And if you include the word do it, pudo hacer, then you might include the lo. Does that make sense? See,
Yeah.
but we're going to keep it short. We're going to keep it shorter and just put it in as pudo, which is often done. Okay. Buena pregunta, Kathy. ¿Hay otra pregunta o no? No? Okay. I hope you're able to see these. If you're not, help each other out reading that. Hopefully it will work. Here we go. Aquí vamos. And we'll send this in after you hit your join buttons. Vale, muy bien. Okay. ¿Y cómo fue? How did it go? Was this one a little bit easier because you didn't have to decide as much?
No.
Oh, wasn't. Oh, darn. Yikes. Okay. So these are all somebody was going to do something. So it's all going to be an iba a. Iba a. Yeah. Let's take a quick look or a long look. Depende. Depends. Yeah.
Yeah.
Depende de tu punto de vista. It depends on your point of view. Okay. So let's take a look again. And Isabel, if you got a question, absolutely stop me, by the way. Okay. I was going to watch a program. Let's just think about that segment. I was going to watch something.
What program?
Okay. If I was going to do it, it's going to be
Iba.
Eva.
iba. And you may or may not use the yo because remember, iba is used for both yo and the él, ella, usted forms. So yo iba a
Mirar.
¿Cuál? Usually this one, guys. Iba a ver.
Okay.
I know you learn. I know we told you that watch is mirar, right? But usually for watching a show, whether that show is live or on TV or on, streaming, most people tend to use ver with that. Okay. I can't really give you a reason why. It's just when you're watching a show of any kind, it winds up being ver. Yo iba a ver
El programa.
el programa. But I couldn't. Pero
No pude.
no pude. And pude is a very irregular form. Pude just means I didn't manage to get it done. That's all it means. Muy irregular. Pude doesn't look like it should come from poder, right? There's no o. Shouldn't there be an o? Because it's poder, but it's just pude. And that's why I gave you the forms of poder and the underline part up ahead here. So, yo iba a ver el programa, pero no pude. Okay. Does that make sense? ¿Sí o no?
Sí.
Sí, bien. Okay. Número 2. They were going to eat dinner, but they couldn't.
Ellos
Iban
Iban
van a
comer.
comer la cena. Or can you just-
comer la cena. What's a shorter way we can say comer la cena?
cenar?
Cenar. Iban a cenar. Iban a cenar, pero
No pudieron.
no pudieron. Pero no pudieron. But they couldn't. Is it wrong to say iban a comer la cena? No, no es incorrecto, not incorrect at all. But remember, we've got 3 particular verbs that we can use for those meal times, right? Desayunar instead of comer desayuno, almorzar instead of el almuerzo, and cenar instead of using la cena. So why will most people just shorten that to cenar? Because it makes it shorter. Because that whole word cenar means eat dinner. And it makes it, easier to say because you're only shortening it to one word, right? So I think you're going to find more people will shorten eat dinner to just cenar. Iban a cenar, pero no pudieron. Bien? Okay. You could also say iban, we'll include this for those who are looking at it later. Iban a comer la cena. And yes, that works too, but cenar muy común. Okay. He was going to drive, but he couldn't. He couldn't find his keys. The car wouldn't start. I don't know. Something happened. He was going to drive.
Sí.
Iba a manejar.
Él iba a manejar. And if you were in Spain or in Colombia, you might say conducir, but manejar is what I prefer because manejar is what we use in a lot of countries. Él iba a manejar, pero
No pude.
no pudo, but he didn't manage to get it done. See, iba a manejar. Él iba a manejar, pero no pudo. Él iba a conducir, pero no pudo. Different verbs are accepted for drive depending on the country you're in. In Mexico, manejar. Hands down, manejar in Mexico all the time, right? Conducir in Spain, conducir. I know some Colombians like conducir. So it depende. It depends, okay? But manejar in Mexico. Okay, we were going to buy it, but we couldn't. Oh, we left our money at home. We left our credit card at home.
Y vamos a comprarlo.
Íbamos
A comprarlo.
a comprarlo,
No pudimos.
pero no pudimos. Pero no pudimos. Íbamos. Oh, give me my accent mark there. I'm not able to type that in. Íbamos a comprarlo, pero no pudimos. Now, there's something else we can do with that little word lo. We can put that little word lo in a different position if we so choose. You have a choice. Because I have one verb, a form of ir, combined with an infinitive. When I've got verb plus infinitive, two verbs working together, talk about the same activity, I can either attach that lo to the infinitive, to the end, it all becomes one word, or I can move it up front to the first conjugated verb. So how would it sound if I moved it up front in front of the first verb?
Lo iba.
Lo íbamos a comprar, pero no pudimos. Sí. So lo íbamos a comprar is equally correct as íbamos a comprarlo. And if you don't really know what the thing is, it becomes lo, right? Lo is a nice generic when it's it and you don't really know what the gender of the item is. Okay.
Pregunta.
Sí, dime.
If you say no comprarlos, then should you say no lo pudimos? Or pudimos?
No, just, the pudimos part?
Yeah, if you say
No
comprarlo,
pudimos, we couldn't.
you don't need to put los in both of them.
No. Oh, I see what you're saying. Shouldn't
So you say
I put that
comprarlo,
it
then
somewhere else? No, really no need to. No.
okay.
If you said we couldn't buy it, then no lo pudimos comprar, but then you'd have to attach a comprar. So I think, and Kathy, you'd asked this before. No pudimos hacerlo. We couldn't do it, right? When I use pudimos or pude or pudo with hacer, couldn't do. When I use it with that verb do, then I can tag on a word it, the word lo. But it's very, very common for people to just say they couldn't. Instead of they couldn't do it, just they couldn't. And when we just want to express they couldn't, all you need is that verb by itself. I hope I did a better job of explaining it that time. See?
Okay.
Bien? Sí.
I just thought that if we said comprarlo, we'd have to do that, but we don't have to.
No, really no need to tag it on another time. No.
Okay.
Okay. She was going to take us. And remember, when you take a thing, it means you're picking it up and transporting it to a different location. And this take, as in like, we're probably implying a vehicle here, right? You're going to take somebody. Well, you could take them by the hand and walk them over to a place, or you could take them in your car. Probably we're implying you're taking somebody in your car. And to say that you take somebody in your car, we use llevar. even though I know you're manejar, you're driving. When you take someone in a vehicle, it's llevar. So she was going to take us.
Yo iba. No,
Ella
iba.
iba a llevarnos, iba a llevarnos,
No,
pero
no pudo.
no pudo, pero no pudo, but she couldn't. She was going to take us, but her kids took the car. She was going to take us, but the car broke down. Okay. Ella iba a llevarnos, pero no pudo. And again, we've got that little word nos. We can, because I've got two verbs working together, again, two verbs, I have an option. I can tag it onto the end of llevar like we did, but I can put it up front. So how will it sound if we pop it up front? Ella
Nos
nos iba a llevar, pero no pudo. Bien? Okay. And actually, I'll just put a dot to save some space there. Okay, bien. Here's a common thing. Oh, a lot of times we say, I was going to call him. Oh, I was going to call her. I was just talking about him. Okay, I was going to call him.
iba
Iba.
llamarlo.
Probably llamarlo, but some people may say it as llamarle. You could hear it that way. Iba a llamarlo, pero
No pude.
no pude. Pero no pude. Iba a llamarlo, pero no pude. And again, because I've got lo tagged onto the end, I can tag lo onto the end of the infinitive, but I can also move it up front. So it could just as easily be yo lo iba a llamar, pero no pude. Bien?
How would you put a name in there? Like if you were going to call John.
Buena pregunta. I was going to call John. Iba a llamar a Juan. Iba a llamar a Juan. And we do need an a then. We need the a because Juan is an object. Who's getting the call? Juan. An object that is a human being needs what they call the a personal. And that little word a in front of Juan translates to nothing at all in English, right? It just has to be there because a human being is receiving the action of the call. So, iba a llamar a Juan. Now, I'm just going to inject one little thing. This whole thing of iba a llamarlo, I was going to call him. Technically, that should be lo. You may hear native speakers expressing that sometimes as le. That is either viewed as an error or something they call leísmo. And there was kind of an old rule. And when I say old, I mean like not 50 years ago, like, I don't know, probably a few hundred years ago. Spanish used to sometimes use lo or le for a direct object, depending, and le would be used for human beings that were a direct object. That has been dropped for a long, long, long time. But because it was commonly done a long, long, long time ago, that habit, it died hard. So you will hear people sometimes saying, iba a llamarle, and just know, oh, they're talking about a guy. That's all you need to know, right? Iba a llamarlo. Iba a llamarlo is considered more grammatically correct, but you may hear people slipping it in as a le. Bien? Make sense? See?
Mhm.
Is that a little bit easier now that we've got that all hammered out? See? Or no?
See?
Okay. Yo creo, en mi opinión, es más obvio cuando usamos ir en pretérito o ir en imperfecto. I think ir is a little more obvious than ser. ¿Sí? ¿Qué creen ustedes? What do you guys think?
Sí.
¿Más obvio? ¿Sí? ¿Más obvio? Okay. What I want to do is show you a little bit of information about we've been trying to focus the last couple of sessions on some verbs that, again, you're going to hear them in like tener. You're more likely to hear tener in imperfecto when you say that somebody had a thing, right? But there are times when it will go into pretérito, but you'll hear it more in imperfecto. Again, era you hear a lot in imperfecto for ser, right? Ir with events, way more pretérito. What I want to do is check out this little video, and it talks about some verbs that are more common in pretérito than they are in imperfecto. So we had era and tenía and quería, wanted, because it talks about a feeling, and feelings don't have a definite beginning and end. If you say, oh, wow, I wanted to ski. Well, I that's what I wanted to do. It was a feeling I had. It doesn't have a beginning and an end, my feeling. So quería, usually imperfecto, but some verbs do tend to be quite often just pretérito. And it's probably going to be a little obvious about what kinds of verbs will do these. These are going to be verbs that are events, things that talk about something that maybe happen ideally only one time, or, they have a definite beginning and an end. So we're going to kind of get a feel for that. So this is the way that you will be likely to hear verbs like this. I need to click on my sound buttons. Here we go. Can everybody see the lady here in the blue background? See? Bien? Okay.
Welcome to the last lesson on the preterite tense. In this comprehensive lesson, you will practice all preterite verbs, regular, irregular,
wait a minute. We didn't want that
stem-changing,
one. Hang
and
on.
those that undergo.
No, we didn't want to do that. Oh, we wanted this one. Well, I clicked on the wrong thing. Okay. Esto es correcto. This is the right one. Okay. Verbs that are more likely to be pretérito because they're kind of more event oriented, and it'll make sense when it depends on what the verb is. Depends on what the action is.
Hola, and welcome to lesson 3 of the preterite versus imperfect. In this lesson, you are going to learn some verbs that are almost always used in the preterite, as they're used to talk about events with a very definite beginning and end. Here are a few examples. As you can see in this table, we have casarse, cumplir años, darse cuenta de, decidir, descubrir.
Okay, let's back that up just a little bit. This really makes sense because you got married. How often do you say, well, they were getting married? Well, okay, unless you say something like they were getting married on the 15th, but they couldn't rent a hall for the reception. So okay, yes, then they were going to. But if you want to say somebody got married, that's, it's an event. So pretérito. Cumplir años, which technically means to complete years. But this is the little phrase, cumplir, with the word años, that means to have your birthday. So if you want to say, my granddaughter turned 18, it would be, right? Mi nieta cumplió 18 años. She completed 18 years. And that means she had her birthday. She turned this age. And that is, yep, you know what? You do that on one day. on the calendar, and then it's done. Oh, this verb realize, and this is a really, really powerful verb phrase. So, darse cuenta de, it's a reflexive verb. Darse, give yourself. No, this doesn't mean give yourself. It does not mean give yourself an account of. This is how they say to realize something. Okay. And usually we use realize in the past. Oh, I just realized that I left my keys at home. I just realized that he left. Oh, they didn't realize that she left the oven on for 4 hours. Okay. Realized is something that generally happens and it's done. So when you see darse cuenta de, the one thing I want to point out is that what gets conjugated is dar. And everything else in there is a non-conjugated, but those little words have to hang together. So I realized becomes, and dar is very irregular, me di. Di is the past for yo, for dar. Me di cuenta de. Me di cuenta de. Te diste cuenta de. Él se dio cuenta de. Ella se dio cuenta de. Usted se dio cuenta de. Nos dimos cuenta de. We realized. Ellos se dieron cuenta de. It's kind of a mouthful for a one-word English expression, but it's not one word in Spanish. It's darse, therefore reflexive, and cuenta de. And cuenta de is always cuenta de, no matter who does it. Okay. The only thing that gets conjugated is dar. And then you have to flip that little se word into a me, a te, a se, or a nos. Okay. Decidir, somebody decided, boom. They mentally made that decision and that's going to happen, right? Descubrir, somebody discovered, meaning they've, again, kind of like saying they found out. Well, yeah, they discovered. So we'll let it roll from there.
Descubrir. And here are some more. Graduarse.
Oh, here's some more. Graduarse, to graduate, because generally that's a one-day event. Yeah. Llegar, to arrive, because when you get to a place, that's pretty final, right? It doesn't mean that llegar can't be conjugated in imperfecto. What it means is it's way more common for people to say they arrived rather than they were arriving. Okay. Morir, way more common in pretérito because somebody died and boom, it's done, right? Nacer, to be born, very, very common. You never hear this in present. Present tense exists for nacer, but it's not really used very much. People use it in the past because somebody was born. Okay, and salir, to leave, because again, salir, like llegar, salir is kind of the bookend to llegar, yeah? Salir and llegar are bookends. One is the arriving and one is the going the other way, leaving. So they're both event oriented because they're connected with motion, you know, connected with going to a place or leaving a place. She's going to explain a little bit more about nacer, which is important to know.
Llegar, morir, nacer, salir.
Or they will shortly. Oh, after we do our little exercise, we're going to explain nacer. Okay. I got my my sequence out of kink there. Translate the following verb. Oh, to get married. Which one, guys?
Casarse.
Casarse. Sí.
It's important to point out that the verb nacer, to be born, is conjugated very differently in Spanish and English.
So now why is it conjugated? Because in English, we say somebody was born. And in Spanish, they don't use the word was. Because that whole idea is wrapped up in one word, nacer. Okay. So even though we use the idea of was born, Spanish does not do that.
Whereas in English, it's conjugated using the passive voice, I was born. In Spanish, we always conjugate it using the preterite tense, as in yo nací.
So you're always going to hear nacer as pretérito. You just will. All right. It's not very common to say, well, he was being born, and no, somebody was born. That's how we usually talk about this. So, nací y es regular. The good news about that is that you don't need all the was were stuff. You just need nací regular. It's a regular conjugated verb. Naciste, nació, was born. One person, right? Nacimos, we were born. Nacieron, they were born.
As you can see here, we would say ella nació instead of ella fue nacida.
So you're never going to hear anybody saying ever 0%. That's sure. Ella fue nacida. Nobody says that. Ella nació. She was born. Okay. They don't use the was, fue, with that verb nacer.
Now, can you tell me what the el form of the verb morir, to die, is in the preterite?
Now, this
Let
one
me
is
give you a
harder.
clue. This verb is a stem-changing verb in
Ooh, it is a stem changing verb and it is an IR verb. And stem changing verbs that are IR verbs fall into a funny, quirky, and bad category that all Spanish students hate like crazy. And that means it gets a little bit of a change.
the preterite.
Okay, so normally this io thing is an ending, right? Oh, but we have two things with io. Morir is an IR verb that is also a stem changing verb. And stem changing verbs with that thing like morir, and there aren't very many of them. It's dormir and morir, and that's pretty much it. They get a little U change. So he died or she died becomes murió. Okay. It's morí. Well, how often will we say I died? Not very much, would we? Moriste, you died. Well, you know what? Sometimes people do use that to say they were dying. You know, you were just dying of hunger. Yeah, maybe. Murió. Murió for he died or she died. Murieron for they died. Murió, murieron. And these you hear a lot because you hear it in the news. You hear it, you read it in the newspaper. Muy común.
In this lesson, Maria is telling us a biography of a very important woman who has been a civil rights activist for many years. Let's see if you can find out who she is.
So,
¿Preparado or preparada? Vamos!
you're going to hear a story told more in the past with pretérito than imperfecto here. And that's what they were prepping you for.
Esta mujer, el 10 de abril de 1930, en un pueblo minero en Nuevo México.
Oh, this woman was born. How would we say that? ¿Nació o nació? Nacía, nació.
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 Nació. She was born April 10th, 1930, in a mining town in New Mexico. Esta mujer nació.
Sus padres, cuando ella tenía 3 años.
And we're going to flip from got divorced to when she was 3 years old. And when she was 3 years old is a description of her age. So it becomes tenía 3 años. What do you think we do with divorciarse? Will it be se divorciaron or se divorciaban?
They choose the-
How many wives?
Aaron. That one.
First one.
This is considered an event. So it'll be se divorciaron, right? Got married, one event, pretérito. Got divorced, the opposite of got married, one-time event. Once that decree is done, it's done. Se divorciaron, pretérito.
Ella, de University of Pacific's Delta Community College, y recibió un grado de instrucción.
Oh, she graduated.
Se graduó.
Se graduó. Ese evento. It's
Se
an event.
casó con Ralph Head en la universidad.
Oh, she got married during university time. ¿Se casó o se casaba?
Se casó.
Se casó. She got married.
Durante su matrimonio, 2 hijas.
Ooh, this one is a little bit specialized. During her marriage, or during their marriage,
Well, it's
they
over.
had 2 kids.
Over with.
Tuvieron.
They had them. They're done having them.
They're done having, if we're talking about the fact that they birthed those babies, yeah, they had a couple kids, it's an event.
Después de su divorcio de Ralph Head, se casó con Ventura Huerta, con quien tuvo 5 hijos.
Ah, and there you actually heard it. After her divorce from Ralph Head, she got married to Ventura Huerta. Oh, con quien, with whom she had. And you heard the word
Well,
tuvo, because again, oh
en
wow,
1955, de ser profesora, y se puso a trabajar por la Organización de Servicios a la Comunidad, CSO por sus siglas en inglés.
Okay, I'm going to explain this a little bit. Dejar has a number of meanings. Dejar can mean to leave something behind, like a tip, or you left your bag behind, or something like that. Dejar can also mean stop doing something. Here it means stopped doing something. En 1955, she stopped being a teacher. She stopped. How do you think we would express that idea? She quit this job, is what it's talking about. Dejó or dejaba?
dejó. Dejó.
Es un evento. It's an event.
Fue en la CSO.
It's an event. Okay. So we're definitely talking about something that had an end. She stopped her teaching job. Okay.
Que ella a César Chávez.
It was in this, and when they said siglas there, siglas means an abbreviation like CSO, okay? That's an abbreviation for an organization. Fue en la CSO que she met. Oh, if she met César Chávez, would it be conoció or conocía?
Conoció.
Seal.
¿Cuál?
Conoció.
Conoció.
Con esta organización, ella
And
cambiarla.
let me wait there. Conocer, when you met somebody for the first time, that's pretérito, right? Met somebody and knew somebody are 2 different tenses in Spanish. Met is pretérito. I knew somebody is imperfecto because I knew them for a long time. Oh, I knew that guy for years and years because I used to teach with him. That is conocía. Knew is conocía, but conoció is met. So let me back this up a little bit at the start here because we missed this. I want you to know that lograr means somebody succeeded. They managed to do something. They achieved something. Lograr has kind of a poor translation into English, but it means that you achieved something.
Con esta organización, ella cambiar las leyes que negaban a los indocumentados la asistencia pública, incluyendo la asistencia legal.
Okay. With this organization, the one that she belonged to, right? She succeeded in changing the laws that denied the undocumented public assistance, including legal assistance. And the laws used to deny, and the laws denied people these rights for a long time. So that stays imperfecto. But what about the achieved part? Should it be logró or lograba?
Logró.
Logró. When she managed to do it, it happened.
En 1960 y cofundó la Organización de Trabajadores Agrícolas.
In 1960, she organized and co-founded the Organization of Agricultural Workers, or Farm Workers Union, guys. Organizaba or organizó?
And so
You can take your cue from the second verb. You've got the confundó, co-founded. Organizó y confundó.
Ella y Chávez de la necesidad de organizar los campesinos.
She and Chavez realized the need to organize farm workers. ¿Se dieron cuenta o se dimos cuenta?
Say the
Se dieron because there are two of them and we
En
is not in the group.
1962, ella, la Asociación Nacional de Trabajadores del Campo, junto con César Chávez.
En 1962, in 1962, she co-founded, cofundó or cofundada?
Fundó.
Cofundó, co-founded.
Desgraciadamente, Chávez en 1993, pero ella continuó luchando por los derechos de los campesinos e inmigrantes.
Okay. Sadly, Chavez died in 1993. Y died es
Murió.
murió.
En 1984, el Senado de California le dio el premio del líder obrero excelente.
The California Senate gave her the award. Premio's a prize, but here it would be more likely translated as award. Y dio, they gave her.
En 1993, ella varios premios reconociendo su labor como líder y activista.
1993, she received several awards recognizing her work as a leader and activist. ¿Recibió o rechazó?
Recibió.
Recibió. Rechazó means
Ella, su propia fundación en 2002 para el beneficio comunitario. Aún hoy en día, a sus 90 años, sigue su lucha activa en contra de las injusticias sociales.
She founded her own foundation. Fundó. Ok, bien. Ok, vale, bien. Entienden un poquito más, ¿no? Bien. Okay. My idea was to give you two stories, totally different. One really personal, one more more of a storytelling of somebody, more of a historical thing, kind of. Is 2 videos too much or no? No? Okay, I'm going to give you 2 stories because I want you to get lots of experience listening to, because the more you hear people using these ideas in the past, the more you'll get that dichotomy between imperfecto and pretérito, and take your cue, right? The imperfecto is going to be like what Ana told you about. It's like imperfecto, video camera. You're taking a continual picture of you're describing exactly what happened, or repeated events, right? So take your cue from events, pretérito, or that making a video, showing lots of pictures, meaning you're showing a lot of descriptions. Okay. You're going to have a story about an exchange student, very personal experience, and a story about a famous person in history and how he wound up making a very famous work of art. Bien? Excellent. Okay. Next week is our last class of winter session. So next week is our last week. Still open for registration for all the different classes. Para que sepan, just so you know. And so we're going to finish up with some more storytelling. One thing I do want everybody to prep is I want everybody to prep something very short, something to share with everybody. The last bit of homework is I want you to pick a relative. Who was your favorite relative when you were a kid? And why? What did they do? Did they do something special one time? Or did they used to do something with you frequently? And that's why that person was your favorite. Yeah, talk about a favorite relative and keep it like maybe 3 sentences. No, we don't want, no term papers. Nice and short, because we could have, easily 10 or 12 people telling all their stories. So we want to keep it pretty short. About 3 sentences is good. I'll give you a little example in my email, so you'll see kind of what's expected. Y eso es. And that's about it. Bien? Okay. ¿Alguna pregunta? Any question before we send you off for the week? Sí o no?
No.
No? Okay. So next week is kind of we're kind of letting you fly a little bit. You're going to choose which tense you use. Okay. And you may flip between a couple tenses, or you may keep it more one or the other. We'll see. Okay. Bueno,